Hi, my name's Jay, and this video is about different solutions that we can potentially bring into the Unity network. So let's just jump right in. You may have seen, I was going to just cover the purpose of the Unity network real quick again. And the purpose of the Unity network is to network with all peoples and social movements to help solve the greatest problems of the 21st century. So this particular video is about, what are some of those solutions, and we're really just going to cover a very, very small fraction of the possible solutions, but we want to make sure that there's a good general concept of the types of solutions that we're talking about. You may have watched the problems video, and you may have saw that we narrowed down all of the problems into three essential categories of problems, and you're welcome to watch the laundry list of all the problems in that separate video as well. So the three primary categories that we have bundled it all into is one, failing. We have failing politico-economic systems at all levels in the world. We have failing ecological and natural systems at all levels. And individuals and families are not being able to meet their needs. This is everywhere at all levels. So, those are the three general categories of problems that we're dealing with. And to really grasp the concept of Unity and what we're trying to get across to everybody and have people understand is that there really isn't even three separate individualized problems that need three separate fragmented solutions. What we're trying to propose and bring forward is that there really is only one overarching umbrella category of problems, and that all other problems that are interrelated and they stem from this. And that is basically we have an unbalanced socio-ecological systems at all levels. This is everywhere across the globe. So, basically to go through a couple of this stuff, the essence of emphasis on this particular realization, trying to get to the component that, the core of all of our problems, right, aren't actually failures of our systems in and of themselves, but that actually it's more of an imbalance, right? And if we start to look at these problems as an imbalance in our socio-ecological systems, I feel, and I think a lot of other people feel this way, that it's much easier to deal with them. So it's a conscious shift of perceiving these problems as an imbalance that can be rebalanced, right? So how do you solve this imbalance? Well, and again, I just want to preface this that this is just one perspective, one option to see these that we're bringing forth, and we're going to be bringing forth a lot of different possible options and solutions in this video, and then from there, it's really up to the public and the people to come together and unite to decide which of these is going to be helpful. So let's start going into some of these solutions and what we can fix. So, to fix this imbalance and there are other problems related to it, what we're saying is that really we just need to nudge our systems back towards a balanced state, right? We don't need to fix everything. We don't need to rebalance it and have everything perfect. It's impossible. We can't just take where we are now and make everything perfect overnight. It's completely impossible. It's going to take a lot of time. But what we can do is we can begin the process of this simple nudge of our systems back in the other direction towards balance and towards this equilibrium state. It's possible. It's not going to be that hard to do it. It will take a lot of people in a unification of many different movements and many different places across the world, but it is completely doable. And once that nudge and that rebalancing begins, it's just a matter of the upkeep of the systems themselves, so that over time the rebalance can come together. And that's nothing we haven't been doing already for millennia. So we should be able to take care of that. What the Unity network is proposing is a set of options for initiating this nudge. And the key to these proposals and the whole series of what we're doing is that they're systems-based approaches. And these processes are infrastructures that we're building, right? We're not talking about simple projects or simple goals or simple events or anything like that. We're talking about systems infrastructure, creating new systems that are based off natural balance between socio-ecological models, so that we can have an equilibrium and slowly get that nudge back towards that equal balanced state. So that's really the direction that we're going. We don't believe it's going to cost very much. It could be huge to support all the other solutions and all the other ideas that people have to try to balance, and fix all these problems that we're having. But again, we want to emphasize there's no single solution, and that's why we made this video, is to basically not tell you what we feel the solution is, because we don't know exactly what's going to work, but we want to give you a tiny glimpse of the whole plethora of possible solutions, and together we can figure it all out, what we want to work on. So to begin understanding of this proposal that we call Unity, you can watch our introductory video if you haven't already. And in that video, we go over all the details for our whole systems and projects. But in this video, for the solutions, what we're going to do is we're going to briefly glance over all the generic versions of our proposals on the overall systems, on the very broad systems of rebalancing our society, and then from there we're going to go over the components of all the different projects and solutions that are more specifically based to solve specific types of categories of problems in our society. So first off, it's going to be briefly go over about 10 overall systems and understandings to help rebalance our society at the broadest levels, okay? And this is specifically talking about our problem of having an unbalanced socio-ecological systems. And then afterwards we'll go into all the different main categories and the 5 main global problems, which we covered in the problem video. And again, all of this is just the tip of the iceberg, but we're just trying to get a glance over so that everyone's more or less on the same page with what we're dealing with. So on the very, very broad overall levels of paradigm shifts, conscious shifts, understanding different ways of addressing, even seeing what the problems are and how they're related to the solutions, many times the solutions may not have anything to do with the problems themselves. It's very important to remember that. So I think it's important to emphasize that we're not only fighting a political revolution, right? So many people, it's all political, and we're not even fighting an economic, just an economic revolution either. Many times people are all like anti-corporate, anti, all the elite, all that kind of stuff, and that is just one component of our problem. So what we're emphasizing is that the time has come to also combine this and fight a global cultural revolution. And the idea of a cultural revolution is that it's not just about all the external ramifications of change need to happen. It's also about the internal community changes that need to happen, and how we even perceive and understand ourselves, and how we understand our cultures, our communities, and how we interact with each other. So on everything that we do to rebalance our socio-ecological systems need to be grounded in cultural evolutions that will be taking place. And the foundation of that is creativity, inspiration, new individualized levels of consciousness where people can rebalance and re-understand the problems from the past paradigms, right? Because we can't just go at all these past problems with the same context that was created with them. We need to have new context to evolve them. So this past dominant culture, we want to fade somewhat. We don't want to get rid of it. I mean, obviously, the culture is a culture. All cultures deserve rights to a certain extent, but we do want it to be part in the background and bring up this new culture and build it together. And I'm hoping that you will be interested in collaborating on this. So the first step to evolving our culture is really for people to join any type of transformational group in their local community or in their regional community or in the global community. Transformational groups are pretty much any type of community group and organization. We're not even asking you to join us. You're welcome to join us. We'd love you to join us, and I'll tell you how to do that and how you can support us. But really any group, any organization will work. I have a couple links here. Volunteer Match has endless different volunteer opportunities all around the world. You can just basically say what you care about, what you're interested in, and click on here. You can see all the different groups and organizations. So that one's pretty simple. We have many different organizations on a group called Idealist. Basically they have 11,000, 12,000 volunteer opportunities right here. So there's just endless organizations that you can get involved with. That's another option that you can consider. From there, we have a whole bunch of different cause-based organizations lists. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's literally thousands and thousands and thousands of different groups and organizations. These are some of the bigger ones. But it's just, there's just so much out there. And if we do it correctly, it's not just about getting involved in your community and your organization communities, it's also connecting into the broader network. How do we take all these fragmented organizations and communities and getting people involved with them and then link them back into a broader network so we're all connected together? So you can be involved in multiple different organizations, but also try to connect to a network so that the organizations that you're involved with are also connected to many other organizations through the people who build those bridges. So as far as the Unity Network and getting involved with the Unity Network, our website is unitynet.info is the easiest website here. And we have a couple links. One is you can get on all of our different social media. So if you click on the main pad link here, the first thing is got Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, email, blogs, all this stuff, Google+. So that's one way of connecting in and supporting our cause. Is just simply supporting us on social media. Another one obviously is to donate time, money, all that kind of stuff. And so if you click here on the donate button, you can see some of our crowdfundraising umbrella. We're trying to fundraise money for our core budgets, all that stuff, but you can also vote and then click here to sign up and get involved if you wanted to volunteer. So that's another option. And then we have learning, educating yourself. There's so much that we can learn for ourselves to transform ourselves, which was really the foundation of cultural revolutions and transformative movements is individual learning and individual evolution. So if you come here to Unity theory, this is kind of what the basis of our entire movement is, and what we cover this more in the introductory video, but the integrated comprehensive theory of societal transformation. If you go to the very bottom of this, there is a whole subject on background education, understanding all interconnected Unity theories. And this particular link just goes off into a whole bunch of different context of social paradigms and also scientific and pseudoscience and religious, all that kind of stuff. It's very, very cool stuff. So and that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much education that people can do on YouTube and other things, but just getting a quick start on what kind of things we're doing for Unity. And obviously you can join, you can contact us at any time. I believe there's also a contact link here on our main page. So, one option to a solution is to get involved, right? That is an option. So from here, I'm going to talk about some of the overall new systems solutions that we're talking about on a very basic, generic level. And these are overall solutions to address the broader context of the socio-ecological imbalance, right? And then after that, we'll jump right into the specific problems that we want solutions for. So let's just jump in here. Create new basic system infrastructures. This is basically what I've been talking about, redesigning our systems based on natural systems, not old fragmented human-centric paradigms. So, we can look at a little slide on this that kind of gives a bit of, what are natural systems, understanding natural systems, how the harmonious relationship between the natural systems and the human systems can easily be integrated. That's just, a quick example of that, but we'll certainly be talking about many more. We want to create systems that are easy for anyone to get involved in, especially very busy people. There's a lot of busy people in the world. This includes social media based, ways that people do quick clicks, just make sure it's easy to get involved. Parallel decision making systems is crucial. We'll talk more about that. In the political evolution context, we want to build community election systems to fill the gap in between the official government elections and the regular needs of people. Right. So from there, we want to mirror existing governance bodies that for them to only represent people. No money, no corporate interests. And create a space where people are directly represented. And we'll talk more about this later on. But in general, we see and are continuing to see that people are getting pushed out of our democratic systems as they were originally intended to represent people, not necessarily money and corporate interests. And it's important to also note that a lot of our democratic systems were created in an era of wealth and money in the hands of very few people. And so, it's not necessarily that our economic systems are all bad. They just need to evolve towards where we are now in our current society. And a lot of our democratic systems are kind of still stuck. So anyways, moving on. Annual cycle of activities and events that people can participate in. We want to create synchronized, repetitive activities that people can know that are coming and can know they're going to be there every single year, and create, a drumbeat. We're creating a synchronization that people know it's going to be happening no matter what. And there can be random events and random activities all going on around this, but it's really important to have a core set of transformative and unity activities that people can get involved in that are not randomized and are very synchronized and have happen on the same times every year, year after year after year. So that is something that's extremely important to creating a stable system. Supporting creative ways to build basic life necessity for local communities. We have to rethink the whole context of how we organize and self-organize globally to make everything as low cost as possible and actually provide these basic needs to everybody. So that's always an ongoing thing, and we want to redesign everything as if there's no landfills, no waste, no garbage, no ocean to dispose in, no atmosphere to dispose your stuff in. I mean, it's basically that simple. We have to rethink the whole design process of everything that we're doing, and really people, individuals, shouldn't have to worry about it. It shouldn't be their individual need to make sure everything is recycled. That's ridiculous. That it's like our society just needs to function that way, so that everything is in alignment with nature and is always reused. So that we'll cover that more in the ecological context, but this is more of in the context of a mind shift, rethinking. Ending corporate cannibalism. Basically, if you are an entrepreneur, you're creating organizations, you're creating new entrepreneurial innovations for the world. Don't sell out. Just don't do it. We need to create systems that are for people, systems that are based on humanity, and systems that are based on evolving the good for everybody, not just for yourself and getting a big payday, and for your own personal gains. My question to people when you look at this whole corporate cannibalism and sellout buyout thing, how does that help everyday normal people? How does you selling your corporation, your organization, help everyday normal people? And I just don't see it. I don't see how it does. It doesn't help create jobs, because whenever a corporation buys out another corporation, they gut it and use what they need and basically downsize so they can increase profits. And then it obviously doesn't create any new products because the products were already there to begin with. It creates monopolies and oligopolies and makes it more expensive for people because there is less options to choose from. But if it makes it more efficient and cheaper for a corporation, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be more efficient and cheaper for the people and the population as a whole. So for me, bigger is potentially more destructive with these huge corporations that keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we should rethink that context. And that's really a personal thing that people need to think about. Why not enter partnerships instead of just selling and allowing your hard-working corporation just to disappear into some mega corporation? So building new cultural activities and events that highlight new paradigms of interactivity and understanding, especially mannerisms, reinventing time, language, learning from each other, and of course having fun with each other. There's a lot to be said about new types of cultural activities that we can create together and really have fun with. And this is just barely beginning to see in the tip of the iceberg. Obviously, we have a lot of concerts and a lot of parties and a lot of big events on TV and all this stuff, and it's not enough. We need something more. There needs to be a active cultural evolution which has new types of events that people can get involved in everywhere that connect us in new ways that we had never thought possible, and that is going to be really, really important. So again, these were overall concepts that is covered for the general rebalancing of our society. And I think it's really important to think about those because it really puts everything else in context of what we're talking about and why we're going about building the Unity network infrastructures in the way that we are. So even though we did list those, they are all options. We're not saying any one of those is more important than another one, and we're not saying we know exactly which one's going to work, but we're certainly going to start experimenting as a network, and you certainly can get involved and help with that. So let's jump into fixing some of these other problems. And the first set is the first category is the solutions to the failing political economic systems at every level. So the first step of that was the economic destabilization affect technological unemployment and wealth stratification. So this is where we really start getting into some detailed stuff. First, we have the increasing of the minimum wage. The minimum wage increasing context is, can be obviously done at any level, any country, but there is also very, very interesting context of thinking about, what this would look like on a global level, because we have a global infrastructure that is the basis of our economy. People are working for corporations everywhere in the world. How can you fix one place without doing another? It stands reason that we need a global system of labor standards, something that will put a floor to the race to the bottom and guarantee a baseline level of human fairness, right? And one of the key components of this is that you can't just do it in one country and then have that country's economy, fall apart, and basically international corporations just go to the other lowest bidder, right? So you have to do it across the entire world, or corporations will find a way around it. That's just what they do. So one proposal is 50 cents an hour across the entire world, right? That's one option. You could type 25 cents an hour. You could say $1 an hour, whatever. It doesn't matter. That's one possible option. But again, you have this problem where, you could easily have countries losing the comparative advantage, and then, the corporation is going to some other countries. So another idea that's come out is a global minimum wage fixed at 1%, right? So this would be like, for example, 50% each country's median wage. So it would be tailored to a local economic conditions, cost of living. So that whatever the median wage was in that country, 50% of that would be your minimum wage. So that's another option, right? So there's a lot of different options that you could do, but anyway, we have to be thinking about it. We have to be considering what the context would look like of having a global minimum wage and just increasing the minimum wage ever as much as possible, because even a global minimum wage isn't going to be enough in certain localities. Creating minimum basic incomes. Basic incomes are fun. So the key component to why a basic income is something that people are talking about is because the original context of work, and creating work was twofold. One, to create capital and profit for people who own businesses. That was obvious, pro of having work. And the second one was income. But there's a big, big problem that's been coming up since the technological innovation and technological unemployment paradigm. And that is that work is no longer generating jobs. Corporations are firing people in massive numbers, and instead of rehiring people, they're hiring computer automated cybernative machines. So the jobs are disappearing, and there's no longer work that is bringing in enough income to be able to live off of, right? So that's where the idea of the basic income comes in, is that if work is no longer providing the basic income necessary, that income needs to come from somewhere else. And one option would be the basic income level. So, what does it mean to have a basic income? It really basically, through our systems, you are ensuring that everyone has a baseline, funding, so that they're able to, it comes into your basic life necessities. How do you meet your absolute basic life necessities? It's kind of taking the concept of a welfare state and getting rid of the welfare state, and instead of, you're basically instituting a system where everybody gets the same amount and there's complete full equality, so that the welfare state is no longer necessary. Whether you're, own billions of dollars, you're still going to get your basic income from the government, regardless of whether you need it or not. So everybody has equal fair group there. Another option of doing this is universal stock ownership and societal equity, which we'll cover a little bit more. So, the key question about societal equity and understanding societal equity is really in why do the 1% own everything, right? Why do they own all the computers? Why do they own all the jobs? Why do they own all the corporations and all of the discovery and knowledge that came along with that? Why do they own our global culture, right? So, when you look at where all this knowledge and all this innovation and all of this amazing, technology has come from, did the 1%, or really the 0.0001%, create it all, right? Who created all the innovation and science discoveries of humanity? And the answer is not the 0.0001%. The 0.0001% did not create all the knowledge and scientific discoveries and innovation and technology of humanity in any way whatsoever, right? If anything, they got lucky. They, happened to own it at the right time, at the right place, and are now, for whatever reason, in a system where they're able to continue to own it. Right? And we're allowing them to continue to own basically the cultural heritage and the technological innovation of the entire cultural wealth of the world. And so, the idea of societal equity is that if you participate in society in any way, you automatically get a share of all of our cultural wealth and heritage on a whole. And it's really that simple, right? Why should you, or anybody for that matter, work for 50 years, your entire life, for a company, getting paid potentially not that much money, pay rent to a landlord for 50 years, paying a lot of money for rent, right? And then after 50 years, the corporation lays you off after making millions of dollars off of your labor, and you have no money anymore because you basically got laid off. And then boom, you can't pay your rent and you go homeless. And the person who was your landlord made millions of dollars off you paying rent for them for 50 years, right? The whole idea that you can be part of society for 50 years, lose your job, lose your house, and now you're homeless with no money, and the landlord and the owner of the business made millions and millions of dollars off of you, is one of the most ridiculous things that's even possible for that to happen. And it happens, and it does definitely happen, and it's happening all the time, especially in third world countries. So how can we create a system? And the question is, we can easily do it. And the question is how, where everybody gets a component of the society if they're participating in it. And it shouldn't be that hard to do, right? And that's really will ensure into the future that everybody collectively owns our society, not just the 0.0001%. So that's just one potential idea of societal equity. The next issue here is, why is everything for profit? Why do we have, every single industry and the biggest organizations in every single industry for profit? It is so easy to just simply create cooperatives, food cooperatives, basic life necessity cooperatives, housing cooperatives, all that kind of stuff, where you're basically creating the same sort of corporate structures that run the world, except they're just not for profit. They're run by people and collaboratively run for the purpose of making and supporting everybody, right? So when you look at the options here for a cooperative society, this is just one way of organizing a not-for-profit system. It's huge. There's so many cooperative farms, but we need cooperative grocery stores. We need cooperative and mutual benefit companies for every single type of product that exists. There's no reason why we can't go to a Walmart-like store that is owned by our entire society privately. That we as a nonprofit come together as a global nonprofit to create massive department stores that actually enrich and support all people of the world, instead of just a few people who just take all the money in the 0.001%. It shouldn't be that hard. We can easily do it. It just takes work. So that's another option. Stock market. Oh boy. The idea here is to create separate stock markets for stabilized economies. Our goal is to stabilize the economy, right? So when we look at our current stock markets, 80% of all the trading is happening in microsecond trading. It's happening on a basis of basically gambling. I mean, there's no really difference between derivatives and gambling and this microsecond trading to manipulate the market to try to suck as much money as you can out of it. What we need people-based markets. It's very, very simple. You just simply take a stock market, you create a new version of a stock market that is people-based. You can invest in companies, right? But it's on the time frame of normal everyday people, right? You put your money in 1 year. You can't take it out a half a second later. You can't take your money out, a day later. You put your money in for a few, like 6 months, or you put your money in for 10 months or 2 years or whatever. But the point is that a human-based system of investment is where someone has money and they want to invest in a company, and the purpose of investing in that company is to support that company to gain capital and increase its ability to function in our economy over the course of years, not milliseconds. Okay, and so we need new stock markets that are basically people-based for people to invest in companies so that they can grow over the course of years, right? And that those stock markets can be the foundation of our economies, because they function very slowly, and through slow functioning of a stock market creates slow evolution and stability. It's very, very simple. All right, so I want to also preface that there's no problem with gambling. If Wall Street wants to have their Wall Street stock market with their millisecond trading and they want to make their billions, that's perfectly fine. I have no problem with it. I don't think anyone else should necessarily have a problem with it, as long as it's not the foundation of our economy, as long as it's not like the actual, existing economy of our entire planet. That is the problem, right? So they can have their own little separate, or big separate, stock market where they can gamble all they want to, but it is regulated as a gambling institution. It's really that simple. Big banks, woohoo. So the idea is, we want to break up the stock market, which we just mentioned there. This would be break up stock market into multiple different types of stock markets. From there, we want to break up the big banks, right? We want to break up the executives and the monopolies and the oligopolies and all the opportunities, right? Let's see what this link is. Breaking up the big banks. New polls suggest voters are in favor. Woohoo! Everyone wants to break up the big banks. All right. 58% support to break up the big banks like Citigroup, including 71% support of Democrats and 51% of Republicans. The key is that there's over 50% of the population, this is particularly in the United States, are ready to break up the big banks. They're too big. They don't serve the needs of individual people and normal everyday people. They are serving the needs of massive industrial corporations that are ruling the world. So there's no need for them in the way that they exist now. There's many different ways of breaking up the banks. We don't need to just annihilate them. That would be ridiculous. We can, first of all, separate the hedge funds from the normal everyday banks that loan out money. It's one of the reasons why there's no credit anymore, is because banks are now make more money by throwing all of their money into the stock market and the hedge funds instead of just doing loaning, which is how banks used to make money. But now they don't have to do that anymore. So that's one option. Obviously, the other options is to just have banks be a certain size. For example, have each state have its own bank. You can't be bigger than the state that you're in. It would be an easy fix. So basically, that would break up all the existing banks into 50 banks, right? So those are different options, and it should be up to the people to decide what's going to happen to the fate of some of these banks. And obviously, we want to work with them, but only if it's in our favor and to help everybody. All right, moving on. Accept that the prioritization of profit over all things is a delusional state of mind and is an illness that needs treatment. What we need is balance, okay? So, the idea of this profit motive, the theory of capitalism that the ultimate goal of business is to make money, there's no other purpose, and that is enshrined into the laws of nations and the laws of the world, where, the sole purpose of a corporation is to serve its shareholders, and it could care less about its customers, it could care less about the public, it could care less about its government, is absurd. It is a delusional state of mind and only serves to support greed and self-interest. And it needs to be ended. I mean, that really in many ways could be the core of our cultural shift and our cultural transformation is ending that being our primary cultural thought process. Greed is a mental disease. People have been putting this out everywhere for a while. So this is something you can educate for yourself. You can talk to other people about, but it's really important that we start dealing with these problems not as pointing fingers and telling people that they're evil and terrible, horrible people and should be, killed and destroyed and just like ripping apart corporations. That all that negativity doesn't help. What we need to be looking at is we need to be, talking to these people and working with these people in the context that they are sick and they actually need help. That we actually want to reach our arms out and help these people who are so immersed in a culture of greed and just taking for themselves that it's actually hurting not only themselves but everybody else on this planet. So it's a mind frame change, which is a very, very important one as well, that these people and the organizations that they represent need help on a medical level and a mental stability level. Basing our society off of a natural economy and creating multi-currency systems. So we want to balance and utilize natural systems. If you look at any natural ecosystem or valley of trees or anywhere, what you always see and you will always see is diversity, multiplicity, diversity. Every tree looks different. Everything looks different everywhere. All the different systems are interconnected and evolving through multiple different levels and ways of transferring information and resources. So we're going to check out a little video here. I'll be this first one. And, basically what we're looking at here is we're looking at the context of what it means to put our human economy into an ecological economy and how a lot of the systems that we currently have in our economy are really just made up. And they're games, and so we create these rules and these games that we follow as adults. And, as kids grow up, they are introduced to these games, but in no way do these games necessarily reflect the natural systems of our planet. So let's just jump into the video and see what we can learn here. It'll be pretty quick.
Is to reshape a stable economy using technology and innovation. To do this, we need to have the current global economy accept its existing place as a subsidiary of the natural economy. Next, we need to create two subsets of the economy, a natural-based economy for basic life necessities, and a diversified monetary economy for adult money games. For both levels, we need to support a massive increase in innovation and technology using tools like the Job Creation Network, which will be covered further in future episodes. All of these branches of the new economy will work together to balance and stabilize our existing economy and allow it to grow. By ensuring people's basic necessities are met and diversifying both fiat and natural-based currencies, it will stabilize, maximize, and expand the size of the new human economy.
So, the key here is our goal is to, one, stabilize our economies through diversification of both the economic systems as well as diversification of the types of currencies and monetary resources available to all people. And also we're expanding the pie to be much, much bigger and greater to as our entire human society expands and evolves over time. So the thing that I want to emphasize here before moving on is that we need a multi-currency system. This is obviously just an option, but what does it mean to have a multi-currency system, and why are we prevented from having multi-currency systems? And there are a few that do exist in the world. A couple examples would be Switzerland uses 2 or 3 different types of currencies, including the euro and the Swiss franc and things like that, where you basically walk anywhere, you can use whatever currency you want. The easiest way for me to explain it is that, interest rates and charging people for money that they don't have is on many, many levels of spiritual, religious, and just basic economics is evil. It's like you are taking and sucking money away from people who already don't have it for no other reason than you say that you have money. You don't even necessarily have to have it, you just have to say that you have it for these banks that give out these loans. So, that's called usury, right? And in a lot of places in the world, usury is actually illegal because it is has some big moral issues with it. The only difference between usury, direct usury of loaning someone who doesn't have money, and exchange rates, where you are basically taking a a percentage of the money that someone is exchanging from one currency to another. The only difference is that instead of the person not having any money at all and needing to borrow money because they need some money, is that the person actually has the money. That's the only difference, right? So if I'm an individual and I have a big stack of dollar bills and I want euros, right? My big stack of dollar bills, I have the money, all the money's there, I just don't have it in the correct format, for the payment, and the bank happens to have that correct format of money. And what's the difference between that and not having money at all and just needing to get money, right? It's pretty much the same thing, right? They're using their leverage of having money to basically take more money, and there's really no reason for it. So, if we got rid of exchange rates, it would solve all the problems of the euro. The whole idea of having a single European currency is perfectly fine, but in no way would limit individual countries from having their own currencies, right? Because you could have a multi-currency tiered system, and you could use any currency you wanted because the banks, would just transfer all the money into whatever form that you needed it in at the time, and it would just completely balance all of our systems, because you would have access to a whole variety of currencies, not only for fiat currencies but also for natural-based currencies, including gold, silver, platinum, and as well as copper, steel, and the petrodollar, all the different natural system currencies. So, yeah, I say that exchange rates are basically another form of usury, and we'll just move on from there, and we'll talk a little bit more about the carbon currencies when we go into the natural systems. So the next thing here is idea-based economies and innovation-based economies. And this is a really important component of evolving our traditional old economies into something that's a little bit new. So this has just a list of different concepts and ideas here. But the key here is, the old systems are manufacturing-based right here. And the new ones would be idea-based experiences, right? What does that mean when you actually change your infrastructure and your models of economies? And I think the key component here is that corporations and businesses and companies, aren't necessarily going away, and that's fine. They're just like anything else that can be used for good or bad. But when a corporation has the right and the ability to buy out new technologies, throw them away, burn them up, get rid of them, lock them up, not allow them to be used for no other reason than to make profit for themselves, you have a problem. So a innovation, technological, idea-based economy would be one where the ideas, the innovations, the patents, the new technologies that are being innovated and created are actually more important than the companies that may or may not own them at the time, right? So in essence, me as an individual or any company or any person that has money could invest not just in a company that may or may not use that technology and may be hiding it or preventing it from evolve, but you could actually invest directly in ideas, patents, technologies, and all sorts of innovations. And that is really the foundation of an innovation and an idea-based economy, is that right now we have corporation and company and organizational based economies, right? Where basically you are forced to do whatever the corporation wants, right? In an idea-based, innovation-based economy, you would be able to control which innovations are going to be excelled and sponsored because you could invest directly in them. You wouldn't have to invest through the company that owned that particular innovation or technology. So that's pretty much how that would work. Moving on, again, these are just all ideas we're just throwing out there. Dysfunctional governments that are too slow for the needs of the 21st century people. Obviously, our governments need a lot of work. So there's just two main issues here I'm going to throw out there. One is the parallel government systems, basically creating systems where only people are represented. But you can also create parallel political systems for any level. But what we need people to be represented as our primary foundation. So I'm just going to throw out another video here. Oh, whoops. I did the wrong one here. Got it right here without the commercial. Here we go.
Also, recreate our politics to be interactive using innovation and technology. The people of the world can establish the World Declaration of Interdependence as the foundation of global law, which clearly states that the people of the world have and can use their existing right to directly represent themselves in all global decision-making. This manifests with the creation of a grassroots, real-time, direct representative democracy on every level, from local to global. This allows individuals and local communities to have direct representation and involvement in decision-making on all decisions in real time. All of this can be reality within months if people wanted to utilize already existing technology, including the internet and mobile phones. This in no way would replace the existing governance structures, and instead would supplement them by making the existing government structures fully interactive, where the population can be involved in daily polls and advising on every issue at every level. The key difference between the structures are the strict borders and long-term, fixed time intervals for elections, as opposed to open involvement and real-time interactivity. The most important thing to understand, though, is that
Okay, we're going to stop there. It's not the most important thing. We already covered the most important thing, which is to get the general concept of a parallel governance structure where you have, on the left side here, we have all of the existing governance structures. And the key is that basically you can interact with your city, but then the city interacts with the county interacts with the state interacts with the United Nations. I, as an individual citizen, cannot interact with the United Nations. That's just not going to happen. So the idea of a parallel system is that as an individual, you are empowered to interact at every single level that you want to, and more importantly, it's in real time, and it goes on and on and on. So it's just much more flexible. You can create huge flexibility and be creative and all that kind of structure. And obviously, in the interdependence concept of interdependence, we need as people to be interdependent with all nature and natural ecosystems, as well as different types of entities that we've created, including corporations. So we can definitely work all those out over time, but we just want to glance over some of these ideas that people understand them. Once we have these parallel political systems, we need to run people on no money campaigns, and basically that's the opposite of people voting for candidates and political parties that have billions of dollars and are controlled by corporations. So it's really a simple mind shift of individuals and people across the world simply voting for candidates who are not running with money. If I as an individual much rather prefer to vote for somebody who doesn't have money. It's just a matter of in that they're a normal everyday person. They don't represent a party. They don't represent some sort of big, huge corporate or monetary system. They represent people, right? So if everybody just voted for people who weren't taking corporate or any contributions, period, all of our political systems and would transform in a few years. It's that simple. And it's just a matter of people knowing to do that, and a matter of knowing who's running with no money campaigns, and that's part of the systems that we're putting together, and you can participate in that. It's pretty easy. The other component of our evolving our political systems is evolving democracy itself. And so the key concept behind this is what we call the democratic trilogy. There's nothing wrong with representative democracy. It's the best thing that's ever been created for governance structures in the history of the world until now, right? Is it perfect? No. Does it have a lot of problems? Yes. Does it have more and more problems because of our society evolving and our democracy is not evolving with it? Yes. That's why we need to fix it. So the idea is to combine representative democracy with participatory and direct democracy to have it be an even playing field, an even balance between those three components, and that is the democratic trilogy. Again, the democratic trilogy is 1, representative democracy, because that's what we already have. 2, participatory democracy, real-time participatory active involvement, and you have your own voice, and direct democracy, where you can directly vote on things in real time on the internet. So that's pretty much it. The next level goes along with the idea of an idea-based and innovation-based economy, and that is Ideacracy. So, in a basic democratic trilogy model, every single person has equal vote, right, and equal voice in the participatory line. In the concept of Ideacracy and evolving beyond even the democratic trilogy, is that every single individual idea, no matter who it comes from, what culture it comes from, where it comes from, what time or generation it comes from, is considered equal. It's a very, very different level, a context of democracy, but it's a very, very important to not only allow individuals to have the same rights, but to make sure that each individual idea is equally considered, because ideas are extremely important and go beyond even just individuals. From there, as soon as you go into the concept of an idea and then making sure that ideas can come from any time period or any culture, any region, everywhere, and making sure they all considered equally, you can get into the ability to do generational democracy, which is really the direction that we want to go, and ensure that all generations from the future and the past have, especially obviously the current generations, have their rights met. And through Ideacracy, you can do that. So that's just kind of the basics of evolving democracy, making sure we have new parallel systems of governance structures. And the key to this is none of this, 0% of any of this that I just described here about creating new systems of governance structures, needs to be approved by an existing governance body in any way whatsoever. All this can be completely done by people across the world or any country on their own. There's nothing in any government law or constitution that's a democracy that would prevent us from doing this. We just can create it. It's really that simple. And over time, as we build our political power to bring it into the old systems, we can slowly transform the old systems, but specifically with the correct points of evolution, because we'll have a lot of experiential practice with these experimental systems that we're creating. So that's that. And I think we're pretty good. Covered a whole lot of solutions for the failing politico-economic systems. Whew, it's a lot. It's a mouthful, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. But we're just trying to make sure people understand that there are a lot of possible options and solutions. And we're not saying that any one of these or two of these are the best and the one that we go through. We're saying, yes, we're going to experiment with them and play with them, but we want people to get involved and vote and prioritize these so we can figure out which ones we want to do first. Okay. Next, failing ecological and natural systems at all levels. So these are the solutions to failing ecological and natural systems at all levels. Climate destabilization from greenhouse gas emissions and other particulate pollution. So the first step here is obviously increasing renewable energy use to a minimum of 25% immediately. This is really, really easy. Currently, 19% of the global world energy consumption is renewable. To get from 19% to 25% in like less than a year is really not that hard. It's just a matter of people wanting it to happen. Once we get to 25%, we really need to be looking at 50%. 74.4% of our energy consumption is fossil fuels. That is an atrocity. That is ridiculous. It's totally unnecessary. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about global warming or climate change or any of that. The whole idea that over 73/4 of our entire energy supply of a civilization or a society is coming from one type of fuel, specifically fossil fuels, from under the ground, is a huge problem. Sustainability of energy resources is very simple. It's a diversity of energy resources. There's no one type of energy resource that's better or more important than another. It's about having balance, right? And that is why it's so easy to fix a lot of these problems, because if we're just trying to rebalance our systems, rebalancing them is not going to be very hard. If we're trying to annihilate all use of fossil fuels on this planet, it's going to be extremely hard. And there's going to be a huge battle against that. But if we just need to increase our renewable energy use to 25% and then eventually go towards a 50% level, it's not going to be that hard. And it'll just completely balance out. Like, there's at least, 15, 20 different types of renewable energies. And so each one of these types of renewable energies should be balanced with the larger context of fossil fuels, petroleum, coal, natural gas, right? So renewables really shouldn't even be its own category. All these different types of renewable energy should be part of the bigger picture, and they should all be more or less an even distribution. So that would be the goal, and it really shouldn't be that hard. It's just a matter of people voting for it, really. So next here, carbon pollutant currency. We're going to go back into some of the ideas of using carbon and sequestering carbon as a currency, which is kind of cool. This article here talks about how a new currency could be designed to support revolutionary economic systems, right? So this is about economic systems, but the key is it's not just about economic systems. It's specifically about how we can fuse economic evolutions with our transforming our ecological and natural systems and our relationship with them. Next, rethinking based on how we use energy. We need to rethink a lot on our energy use. So one, we want to change where we get our energy, but overall we're still consuming massive amounts of energy that is not needed. The key thing here is just a general individual who lives their life, right? Almost 3/4, right? 3/4 of all of our energy is coming from heating and cooling, both water and space, right? That is where we need to be focusing on, the heating and cooling, right, of water and space. Like, why are we spending so much energy on that? Heating and cooling water, if there's sunlight, you can easily do that with water heating solar cells. It's pretty simple. It's just a matter of making them cheaper and easy to install. But beyond that, we're going to talk more about how we can use the space heating and the space cooling, right, which is over 50% of all energy that's used in society. How can we reduce that dramatically? And we will be talking about that in a minute here. The other graph here shows how over 1/3 of all the energy that we use in the world is transportation. That's huge. It's really more like going towards half, because some of the other and some electricity is all intertwined with transportation. So yeah, we need to do something about that. That is a problem. So those are the two main components of energy that are need to be dealt with, and so we need to rethink how we target our use of energy specifically to one, our housing, cooling, and heating systems, and two, to our transportation systems, right? Our transportation, housing, and cooling systems use literally 75%, 80% or more of the energy in just those two systems right there. Let's look at our transportation. So how could we overhaul our transportation system? This is currently what our transportation system looks like. And the key to this is that you have to look at the global roads are all in the green. And obviously you have all of the planes and boats and everything. There's no easy solution, but the key is it all needs to flow together, interconnect together, so anyone can get from anywhere locally as well as globally at the least amount of energy utilized. And it should be cheap. It should not cost a lot of money to travel and get around, and in a way that is a low footprint on our ecological systems. I'm not gonna get too much into it, but it's really a mind shift of thinking, rethink our entire transportation grid as a one whole overall global grid of transportation, and making sure it's simplified and that it's easy to get everywhere. This doesn't have the trains on it, so obviously the trains will be a huge plus, as well as hyperloops and other types of ground transportation. And we have there's a whole variety, probably dozens and dozens and dozens of transportation proposals and options and solutions that we can go into. But obviously one component is free, clean, fast, and effective and interconnected public transportation systems everywhere to reduce single occupancy vehicles and just in general small located vehicles. And some of the key things here is clean, fast, free. We need to get people to use these systems to reduce our energy waste in transportation. Here's a couple of things that are happening now which are really good that we want to increase on. You can just see the number of cities here who have all these awesome, different aspects of evolving our transportation systems. And this is just the beginning. We need to do much more than this, but this is at least a really good start. Again, I also want to emphasize the need to connecting individual houses and individual people to mass public transportation systems, right? Everyone needs to have guaranteed ability to access for work and education minimally. If you need to get to work and you need to get to school, there has to be a way of getting you from your house to the bus stop or to the metro or wherever. A lot of people, they're just not going to walk that half mile or even a mile sometimes to do that. And if the link was there to get them from their house, they would use public transportation, right? If the public transportation was clean, was efficient, effective, fast, all those problems with public transportation can easily be fixed. It just has to be effectively planned to work for how people live their lives currently, not having to change their life into some other paradigm where it's going to take them 2 hours to get to work instead of 15 minutes. Obviously, some cities are a lot better doing that than others. All right, moving on. Redesigning modern housing structures. Okay, so we're getting into the thicker walls for specifically thermal heating, which is really important. So let's look at some of these. When we're talking about building buildings and thermal heating systems, we're talking about thick, large walls, and it's not even just about thick and large and big, it's about density, right? The density of that per square unit is going to be much, much greater than a little stick would be, for a normal, building that's made with wood, okay? And we'll explain more about why this is so important. Let's see if this comes up here. Thermal mass. So let's just look at the construction real quick. So this building is made with bricks and mortar, right? Very, very heavy, very massive, and very dense, right? When you have a massive, dense structure, especially if it's thick, you don't need air conditioning. You don't need heating. It holds the heat in. It traps the heat in. It holds the air in and cools, and everything is done in a very, very slower and more stabilized way. And that is what we need to be bringing into our system. So thermal mass is a property that enables building material to absorb, store, and later release significant amounts of heat. Building construction out of concrete or masonry has energy-saving advantages because their inherent thermal mass. These materials absorb energy slowly and hold it for much longer periods of time than less massive materials. It's really that simple. We need to be evolving our building techniques and creating systems. I mean, very, very soon we're going to primarily be building buildings with 3D printing machines. If you're a construction worker, construction jobs are going to go away. I mean, there's no hands or feet about it. It's called technological unemployment. So you should join our cause and actually change some of our economic systems, because even construction workers are not going to be around much longer. So anyways, the future of buildings is that basically a 3D printer goes out and prints the building for you. It's basically going to be done by a computer and a machine. And so the key is when we're building these systems, and we know that future buildings are going to be built that way, we need to ensure that they're built with the materials and built in ways that are energy efficient, specifically to reduce heating costs and cooling costs, which means thermal mass energy systems. Okay, it's really that simple. These are ancient technologies that have been used for thousands of years. There's no reason why we shouldn't use it in our current building systems. All right, and this is just one way of saving energy, but specifically targeted to the two biggest energy wasting systems, which is transportation and heating and cooling. All right, so that's that. Next set is the destruction and land pollution of 70% of the ecological land ecosystems, oceans, mass species die-offs, etc., etc. We need more protection for parks, both land and in the ocean. That's really that's really the beginning, and this is just the tip of the iceberg for the beginning. Let's look at the land. These are the parks in the world right now. This is the protected area, but the interesting things here is if you look at the percentages, this would be this dark here area, 71% to 100% of the land in Venezuela is protected. That's insane, right? That is insane. The whole world should be that color. You know, the whole idea that we can survive as humanity off of 0 to 5% of the planet protected, or 6 to 10%, or even 25%, I mean, or under half, that's crazy. That's crazy. We can't just kill off half the planet and think that we're going to be okay. So we need to be protecting much more space of the planet. What would that look like? Let's just use this map as an example, right? This is the map that shows all of the different old growth forests. I don't know if it's going to come up. Oh, here. Oh, no. This is the protected area again. So this is another view of the actual protected landscapes in a global component. You can see here, it's not a lot. Not a lot of the world is protected. And remember, you can have people living in a protected space where they're not allowed to just bulldoze or cut trees, but people can still live in collaboration with the environment. There are multi-use protected habitats. And this is what we want. So you saw this in the problems. The entirety of the Amazon jungle is the last large frontier of, forest. That entire area needs to be protected as a World Heritage Zone. There's just no other way of going about it. And the entire area should be paid to be protected and to sequester carbon and to create oxygen for the world. That they are making resources for the world and should be directly paid by the world to do that. The Congo, again, needs to be protected. The entire boreal forests, need to be protected. And the little tiny bits left over here should be protected as well. So basically anything that's old growth should just be protected. Boom, off the bat, done. From there, all of these green sections of forests should all be replanted, and they should be mixed use. So basically that would mean that, rivers have right-of-way in these green areas, and we're going to replant trees, and we're going to create natural ecosystems along with the human systems in a way where you can have a balanced ecology. So that's just kind of like a basic direction that we would want to go with our protection of forests across the world. You can see how little of the Amazon jungle is actually protected right now. That's the land. Ocean. Where do we want to go with the ocean here? So with the ocean, the marine protected areas of the world currently is not adequate. Again, the marine areas is 70% of the planet. And, we have more land protected than marine ecosystems at this point, which is kind of absurd. So if we zoom in here, we can see there's a little bits of protection along the coastal ranges. And obviously the coastal ranges are where you have the most biodiversity in the ocean. So we would definitely want to continue those and continue protecting them, but obviously increase it. So what would you want this to look like? We want it to look something more like this. Those are red hot biodiversity zones. This is huge. The whole upper northern Atlantic Ocean should be protected, as well as some of the Pacific Oceans. This entire ring right here should be protected. Anything that's pretty much red should be protected. And we shouldn't be eating or killing large fish. So that's pretty simple. Can we protect all of it? No. But we can protect the vast majority of the oceans. Almost done here. Let's stop cutting down old trees. Let's stop taking the bounty of the oceans, especially large predatory fish. There's a lot of different guides on how to reduce our consumption of fish and only be eating good fish. I think the easiest way to do it is just to eat less fish. Don't eat big fish, eat small fish, sardines, small fish, crustaceans. But either way, obviously people need to eat, and we'll continue to be eating this. So there's a lot of different ways of doing it. Best choices, good alternatives, things you should avoid. There are one of these for every single city pretty much in the world, all the big cities, every country. On a broader level, everywhere, the red list, just don't eat them. Pretty much any big fish shouldn't be eaten out of the ocean because they're all just completely been demolished. But all of these types of fish, a lot of the big tunas, different types of salmon, it's just we shouldn't be eating all these things anymore. They're not doing well. And I'm not going to go into the details, but I'm just trying to hit all the key points here for these solutions. And there's a lot being done on the scientific levels for how much fish we can take out of the oceans and have a natural equilibrium. But I'm not talking about that right now, but there is a lot being done already. With all this stuff, there's a lot being done. It's just that we need to do more, and we need to connect it all into a unified system. So basic rights for high intellectual animals, animal colonies, ecosystems, plants, and more. Orcas are one of the smartest animals in the entire history of this planet. They can be communicated with. We can learn their language. We can talk with them. It's all possible. They deserve rights, period. Some of the great apes are extremely intelligent. There are monkeys that supposedly have larger brain-to-body ratios than we even do. The direction a lot of this is going is what's called rights for nature. The important part here is with the enactment of the 2008 Constitution, Ecuador became the first country in the world to codify the rights of nature in Articles 10. This is huge. So the idea here is that ecosystems have inalienable rights for ecosystems to exist and flourish, right? And that anybody can petition on behalf of an ecosystem and require the government to remedy violations of those rights. This is just like the foundation of a human economy being a subsidiary of the natural economy. The natural economy has inalienable rights just like everybody else. All right, let's watch a little video. This is basically redesigning everything as if there was no landfills. Oops, I always do that. Okay, here we go.
Our planetary relationship using technology and innovation. To do this, we need to initiate broad application of integrated sustainable design for all of the resources we produce and use. The key difference? Landfill, which will no longer exist in a natural-based economy. And to create a cyclical resource stream, we convert all landfills to resource cycling centers. As soon as you end the use of landfills, you have to rethink the design of everything. And the first step is scientific studies and analysis, including a global infrastructure survey and a global resource management survey, all of which goes into the life cycle planning of products. So we plan the entire history of a product, including what it will be turned into after it is done being used, before we even make it. This planning and management ensures optimized resource allocation of raw materials, and along with cycled materials, planning, and scientific analysis, we can ensure the most optimized production of goods possible. From there, we ensure optimized distribution, optimized use and long-term maintenance for the longest utility, which brings it back to optimized resource recycling that ends the idea of waste in landfills. We can't learn how to do this overnight, but over time, this can be the standard system that every inventor and product design team follows.
So the key here is that, is redesigning how products are made. It's really that simple. It's like, why should we design products in profit-based systems to rely on landfills? It's completely unnecessary. If we simply design our systems in a way where landfill is taken out of the equation, you just make the systems work, and they will. It's really that simple. There is really nothing that can't be either 1, reused, 2, composted, or 3, recycled, or of course stored for future occasion in a way it can be broken down. So that's extremely important context, and it also brings the context of changing our perception and our educational systems to be teaching students and young people about redesigning everything without the context of landfills. All right, we're going to jump into our last section and we'll be done. I know this is a lot of information, but this is just the tip of the iceberg as far as the solutions go. And this is one of the reasons why we as the Uni Network are not proposing a single solution. Instead, we're saying there are endless solutions. We as a community can prioritize them and figure out what the best way of implementing is. So the last category is individuals and families not being able to meet their own needs everywhere. We need basic access to food, water, healthcare, education, incomes, and all other life necessities. One thing I want to just emphasize here is that we currently have 7 billion people on this planet. And you could look at that as a whole massive amount of people. Oh my God, this is so out of control. And yes, it is. I mean, it's 3 times more than there should be. We should have 3 billion people on this planet. But the population doubled in the last generation. And so that's where we are right now. Most likely the population is going to double again to 14 billion before we are able to get the educational resources out there to bring the population back down in a natural way. Is that the end of the world? No. Is it going to increase our consumption? It doesn't have to. Is it going to increase our degradation of the environment? It also doesn't have to. Will it reduce the rights and privileges of people across the world? Yes, they will. The more people there are in the world, the less of the world there is to go around for each individual person. But we can still get by with that if we share. So the thing to understand is that there could be many, many more. We could easily have 14 billion people that we have to deal with now. But for whatever reason, we currently have 7 billion. And that's half as many as the next generation might need to deal with. So everything that we implement now will be, twice as easy as it will be in a generation from now when there's twice as many people. Okay, so remember that. Also, there's no reason to believe that there aren't places in the universe where there are multi-planetary systems. We happen to have a single planet that we have to deal with. There is easily places out there in the universe where they have multiple planets to deal with, or even a planet that has 50 billion plus people. So it is technically possible that we could be in a situation where we're dealing with 50 billion people or more, but we're only dealing with 7 billion people, and it's not that bad. We can do it. All right, so take a deep breath and just remember that it could be much worse than it is. One thing that doesn't make a lot of sense is why do we not have more non-profit programs to meet people's basic life necessities? If you look up basically non-profit help to meet people's necessities, this is what it's going to look like. You're basically going to get a laundry list of pantries, food banks, community shelters, all this stuff. Okay, that's not enough. It's just not enough, right? We need to create, non-profit, mutual benefit companies and organizations that are not for profit, that are not trying to put a bunch of money into the hands of a few, and instead are supporting the well-being of the entire world, right? This is completely possible. It's very simple to do, and it just needs to be done in a collective way with many, many different people collaborating together. So we're going to look at the one example of producing global bottled water program, and also this would support and raise money for well and clean water programs across the world. And this is the global club analogy, where we as a global society and a global civilization are creating products at the absolute cheapest possible rate of distribution and cost for people who need these products, which is everybody. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at this particular video, and this will be the last video you look at.
Club analogy. Remember way back in the day when you or your parents used to go to the supermarket and there were only name brands available? Now you go to the supermarkets and they have store clubs where you get a deal on buying generic products financed by the grocery store itself instead of buying the name brands. In a natural-based economy, instead of just name brands and store-made products, you also have a third category, the civilization-made product. Our entire unified global civilization will actually make essential products for basic life necessities that will be produced and distributed globally as efficient and effectively as possible, therefore making the cheapest possible product to buy. Over time, you will see the Civilization Club products on your grocery shelves. As these products are made in increasing levels of abundance and with the most efficient production and distribution possible, they will become cheaper and cheaper. Yet for those who still want their store-made products or name brands, you can still buy those too. So it's a win-win situation for everybody.
Okay, so the Global Civilization Club is can be applicable to any type of food. Really, you're talking basic products that people need to live their lives, like water, food, rice, beans, those kind of things. We're not going to be making luxury items on a global level like that, but this is something that you don't need any government funding for, you don't need government support for, or anything like that. You just need to do it as a community, as a nonprofit company, and these types of global nonprofit companies can easily compete against the other big corporate water companies, except the difference is that instead of being owned by a few people, the resources of these massive international companies go to the entire citizenry of the world. All right, global access to health care, another basic life necessity, which should be pretty easy to deal with. And this is this is a map of all the countries in the world who currently have universal health care. It's not a small number, to tell you the truth. I mean, it's almost a third of the world, if not going towards a half of the world, already has universal health care coverage. The amount of money it would cost to connect all of these different groups together, all these different countries together, right, and provide global healthcare resources would probably be double the current cost that they spend on their own personal countries. It's not going to go up exponentially as you get more and more people involved. So the question is, why don't we do it? Why don't we just have global healthcare programs for everybody? I think one of the interesting thing about global healthcare programs is that currently the only thing that we really do on a global level is security, war funding, and security funding to protect the world. The next thing that we need is a global healthcare system so that everybody across the world has healthcare, because everybody needs it and it helps everybody. So anyways, another way of looking at that is education for all, the global educational system. And it just goes to show you how little of money it would cost. We know that the cost of that cure is perhaps $7 to $10 billion a year to have every single boy and girl in the entire world grow up with an education. This is just like duh. There's no reason why my child is more important than your child, and that your child can't also go to school along with mine. Why should my child have any more or less rights than yours does? And it shouldn't matter where they are in the world. So this just needs to happen. And the same would be true to have access to a doctor. Why should one person's child have access to a doctor, but another's not? We talked already about the basic guaranteed income, but this can be important on other levels. But should anybody across the world have less than $1 a day is really what that comes down to. That would be pretty easy to get started with, and there are some other ideas of creating cryptocurrencies that are based on that as well. Direct access to homes. Oh, I love this graph. Okay, this graph shows how much it costs for taking care of a homeless person in a shelter, right? Homeless shelters, right? Medical expenses, costs, hospital costs, inpatient care, outpatient care, right? All this stuff, right? If you give them housing and you just pay for their housing, permanent housing, the only cost that goes up is the Medicare outpatient, because they have to go to their house to give them outpatient services. Every single other section of costs goes down. It's actually cheaper to permanently put a homeless person in a home than to keep them on the streets and have them be in shelters. It's that simple. No one should be homeless. It helps everybody not having homeless people. And the last thing I'm throwing in here is a potential new conceptual framework of a basic life necessity, especially in the context of having a well and just society, is access to reasonably correct and truthful information. Why shouldn't we need access to information that is reasonably correct and reasonably truthful? How can we make informed decisions? How can we inform what we're voting for? How can we inform what we're doing in our communities? And how can we do that? One is democratizing the media, right? We can democratize our information systems, right, to prioritize truthful and non-biased, objective and unmanipulative information, right? A lot of the information that comes through our media streams is very, very manipulative in trying to get people to buy certain products or do certain things regardless of whether they want to. There needs to be access to information that is separated from manipulative information, that is objective, non-biased, and that it is truthful to a reasonable extent. I believe that is a core right of humans to have. Let's look at this. Democratizing knowledge. The concept of spreading knowledge amongst the people, and not just people who have access to money and academics. Democratizing of information. This is quite an interesting charter. It basically is calling on the UN to create a charter for the information age, which is very important. I really like this. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but basically freedom of communication and information signifies the free flow of ideas, opinions, and knowledge, and should be a human right. Media democracy. Media and democracy is a set of ideas advocating reforms of mass media, strengthening public service broadcasting, developing alternative media and citizen journalism. Getting more and more people involved in creating a media system and information distribution system where you're working on ensuring that the information is not just prioritized, but actually is unbiased, truthful, and meaningful information is extremely important. So I think from there we're pretty good. That gives you just a really brief glimpse at a whole variety of proposals and ideas for solutions to implement to fix these. And again, the Unity Network is not saying that we want to do all these, or that this is more important than any other one. These are just the tip of the iceberg. This is just an example of the direction that we're going. And so the next step here would be to prioritize all of these solutions, projects, ideas. Anyone can input any idea that they want to. We want to get everything all prioritized and just see where the interest is. Where there's interest is where we want to focus on. And that is really the first step of the Unity network. So thank you for watching this video. It turned out quite long, but it was very, very informative and informational. If you haven't seen the problems video yet, you should definitely watch that to get a better grasp of why we're proposing all of these different potential solutions. And then also you can watch the introductory video for the Unity network, which kind of brings into perspective our specific proposals of infrastructure systems to kind of help that nudge that we were talking about earlier. So I believe that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck with all of your endeavors. Take care.